At the very base, though, of all of this, I think it's quite clear that it makes no sense whatsoever to have a helicopter flying at co-altitude with an approach to a runway. It doesn't make any sense whether you might avoid that collision 99 times out of 100, but like, it's not a sensible way to draw this up. And I think that's the story kind of across the country. We did a documentary not that long ago. It's called Countdown to the Next Aviation Disaster. And we didn't know how long that countdown was. Turns out it was 70 days. 70 days from the time this documentary came out to this horrible disaster. And we don't know the cause of it yet. We might wind up finding something out of the ordinary out. We do know that there was conversation between the air traffic control and this helicopter and the plane. They seem to have awareness of where each other was on this journey, and were unable to avoid it for whatever reason. We'll have more information of that as we go on. But it's just 70 days ago this was going on, and we were looking at just exactly this, right? Like, how far are we away from something like this happening? Because we were letting our air traffic control system and our overall aviation systems degrade at rapid paces for a very, very long time. This was something that you could see coming, frankly. We looked at all this stuff, and as we went through it, it was just jaw-dropping. You think of the United States as this high-tech country, and we've got all the best stuff, and that's true in tons and tons of ways, but not with our air traffic control system here in this country. I talked to Rob Mark in the documentary. He's a guy who's an air traffic controller forever. He has been looking at this for a very long time and is trying to awaken people about what the heck is going on in our country. Watch.
There are many other incidents that happen on a weekly basis in our system that don't make the nightly news. It's because some controller or some pilot caught it before it got out of hand.
Within days of the close calls at Washington, Reagan, and JFK, the FAA Administrator, Mike Whitaker, issued a directive increasing the amount of rest controllers should get between shifts. But it did nothing to deal with the underlying problem, the shortage of controllers.
The warning signs are there, and we all wonder, is anybody listening?
Apparently not. That does seem like, unfortunately, the conclusion you have to come to in a moment like this. And when you really go down the road and look at the shortage of controllers, there's a lot of factors that go into that. We talk in the documentary about some of the DEI effects, and people are like, "Well, what are you saying, that people who are people of color or can't do this job?" No, they absolutely can do this job. If they're the best at the job, they should have the job. However, another function of this is, it's not just hiring African Americans or Hispanics or whatever for these jobs. It's also avoiding hiring white guys for these jobs. White guys can be just as incompetent as any other race, of course, but when you have a large pool, it's a high percentage of the population that want to be air traffic controllers are white males. And when you start avoiding white males, you're starting to avoid some of the best people. Not all of them, but some of the best people for these jobs. We don't know for sure if this means there was some incompetence here from the air traffic control. But what we do know is that there's not enough air traffic controllers. That a lot of the people that want to be air traffic controllers are being eliminated from those jobs. How bad is the problem nationwide? Really, really bad. You heard in that last clip, we actually talk about near misses at Reagan Airport. We've talked about that specific thing in the documentary and go very deep on the entire system as a whole.
Today, the FAA has about 1,000 fewer fully certified controllers than it did just 10 years ago, even though air traffic has increased. Major hubs and critical facilities are extremely understaffed. The FAA's Inspector General says 77% of critical facilities are staffed below the agency's 85% threshold, including the New York Terminal Radar Approach Control Site, which manages planes in and out of New York City's airports. That facility only had 54% of the fully trained staffers it needed last year. And callouts can snarl air travel across the entire country.
Half of the controllers in the country are working 6-day weeks, 10-hour days, and it's mandatory. I did some of that for a while when I was still a controller, and I got to tell you, it's a killer.
The shortage has caused delays and cancellations. It's led airlines to reduce flights to some cities because of congestion. And worst of all, as the relative number of controllers has declined, the number of near collisions between commercial aircraft has surged to nearly 3 per week.
We have the largest and the most complex aviation system in the world, and it works really well. But every so often, something just takes a wrong turn.
Just a wrong turn. That's really all it takes to turn one of these incidents that could have been avoided into a complete disaster, like the one that we saw last night. And it's not just like, these air traffic controllers. Some of them are incredibly smart and talented and working really, really hard. The vast majority of them are. But they're not given the tools to do the job well. It is incredible the lack of technology that these guys are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, the lack of available tools that they need to do this job, which is a very, very difficult job, an incredibly confusing job for people to participate in, and we went into depth on that as well.
While putting together this episode, one of the things that struck us the most was how outdated our air traffic control system is.
Let's start with just the technology of air traffic control.
Right.
I think the average person would think we're a highly advanced country.
It's not the case for air traffic control.
Can you give me some concrete examples of the things they're doing that I think most Americans wouldn't even believe?
Well, one is paper flight strips.
Paper flight strips.
This is in control towers. Let me
Yeah, that'd be great.
show you one.
Today, like in 2024, air traffic controllers still use paper flight strips to track planes.
It comes off a little printer at the controller's workstation. And this one is quite recent. It's from last fall. It's Delta Airlines, that first thing there. It's a 737-9. It's going from SFO to Minneapolis-St. Paul. And these other things are little waypoints that the departure is going to involve.
The FAA has been trying to replace paper flight strips with an electronic system since 1983. But being a government project, it's behind schedule and over budget.
1983 they've been trying to do this, and they haven't been able to do it yet. Absolutely incredible that this is going on in this country. And who knows if it led to this, this lack of technology led to this particular incident, although it certainly makes these incidents much, much more likely as we go. It's not just paper flight strips, though. This is an entire problem with the whole system. And lots of other countries have already fixed these problems. Like, we're the ones that are sitting here with ancient technology trying to act as if we have the most advanced flight systems in the world. I've read that they still utilize floppy disks.
Yep.
No. Please tell me
that's in a report that came out last year.
The report, which is public and published in November, is horrifying. The FAA uses tracking beacons so old that they can't get replacement antennas. In some cases, they're using pre-digital 50-year-old radar system with sparse replacement parts. Those with the expertise to fix them have aged out of the workforce. The FAA uses more than 1,000 instrument landing systems that are no longer supported by the manufacturer. And amazingly, the FAA also lacks the intellectual property rights to build replacement parts for the archaic technology.
This big safety report got virtually no attention in the general media and only very limited attention in the aviation media.
That's Robert Poole, who's been working on this forever. Great guy. And he has been trying to get this thing fixed, trying to alert Congress, has almost gotten over the finish line several times trying to improve this system. But every time something happens and some political interest shuts it down, maybe this will be the thing. If you're in Congress and you're listening to this today, call Robert Poole. He can help you with this. Help get us, to this century. That would be nice. It's really, really frustrating when you look at this from the beginning. The documentary goes into all sorts of stuff as well. The DEI was a big focus. Donald Trump talked about that today. Whether DEI was any factor on this, again, we don't know yet. It's too early to know. But there was sort of talk about what these possible causes could be, and Donald Trump discussed that at length in his press conference today.
They put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program. Then another article, the Federal Aviation Administration, this was before I got to office, recently, second term. The FAA is actively recruiting workers who suffer severe intellectual disabilities, psychiatric problems, and other mental and physical conditions under a diversity and inclusion hiring initiative spelled out on the agency's website. Can you imagine? These are people that are, I mean, actually, their lives are shortened because of the stress that they have. Brilliant people have to be in those positions, and their lives are actually shortened, very substantially shortened, because of the stress where you have many, many planes coming into one target.
It's a really freaking difficult job, and it is a really stressful existence. And it is true. You kind of listen to Trump say that. You know, like Trump at times can make statements off the top of his head, and he's not always exactly accurate. He's not always known for the precise nature of his public statements, but I can assure you what he's talking about there is real. That actually happened. Talking about major psychiatric disabilities, they were trying to recruit people for these jobs, which is not the type of job that you want someone who has major psychiatric. I don't know what job is correct for major psychiatric disorder. Maybe the head coach of the New York Jets. I don't know what the right job is for that person, but I don't think it's FAA head. I'm pretty sure that's not the one to go with. We go into the DEI stuff a lot in the documentary. And by the way, this is up on YouTube, youtube.com/ I think it's BlazeTV's YouTube page is on. Go there. It's actually, if you want to find it easily, you can go to Twitter or x.com/StuDoesAmerica. I have it pinned to the top if you want to watch the documentary. It goes through all of this stuff, including I talked to a guy who sued the U.S. government because he was a white guy and they wouldn't let him get a job as an air traffic controller because he was a white guy. He passed with flying colors all of the technical tests. He got 100 on the exam and then was eliminated from his job because he failed the biographical survey, which asked him questions that didn't actually straight out come and say, "Are you white?" but tried to get to that answer. And eliminated a lot of people who had real talent and showed real promise in science in high school and all these things. Instead of giving a bonus to a candidate like that, it actually punished candidates like that. What that says about the government's opinion of people of color is a whole nother situation. I would call it straight out racism by the U.S. government. And that's what it seems like the courts are saying as well. So you have all of that in there. I encourage you to go check out the documentary in its entirety. But I want to leave you with kind of where we were left there, looking toward the future, a future that should be bright in a country like the United States, but a future that's kind of filled with fear once you get this information in your head. You can go, you get on a plane, you take off, you land, everything's fine. And that's the way it's going to be for almost everybody. And the fact that we can move people across the country at 600 miles an hour, mostly safely, is a miracle. It's a great accomplishment. But you don't want to take what we have, which is a safe air traffic control system, a safe aviation system, and destroy it. And that's what we've been doing for multiple years. We've been degrading that system for a very long time for terrible reasons. And now we're facing situations like the one we're in now. I hope this is the only incident we see for another, 20 years almost. I hope that's true. But there's reason to believe that it isn't. And so we kind of went through all of this information. You can get it all in the documentary. It's up on my Twitter page. And this is sort of where we were left at the end.
The reality is, flying in the United States is still very safe. But air safety isn't something we can or should take for granted. It's an incredibly complex system, more than most realize. The shortage of controllers is real, in a job that requires constant focus. It's not good if they're showing up to work fatigued and short-staffed. The fact that ideologues attempted to rig the hiring process to deny qualified applicants on the basis of race, that bureaucrats are stalling on obvious modernization proposals, and that the administration is pretending everything is fine when there are 3 close calls every week. Those are canaries in a coal mine. The race is the most important question of all. What will have to happen for our leaders to do something? Will they take the initiative, or will they wait until a close call becomes a human tragedy.